Hi, this is Dr. Aiko Hormann. Well, today I have more miracle stories, and this time I'm going to talk about the Satan's insignia. And I did not know about this until about 10 years ago, while I was or maybe more than 10 years ago. I used to live in Santa Monica, California, and this lady who had a cancerous tumor on her left breast, and she was healed, but then later on the cancer came back, and also one day she told me she was really panicky, and she said a whole bunch of demonic spirits in her room and tormenting her and attacking her. And so I asked her, what she was doing, and as it turned out, she was like a mantra, chanting. And she got into some kind of Oriental chanting, and I don't know a particular Buddhist program, but she was given a particular mantra. And as it turned out later on, I didn't know it at that time, but those names, they are names of foreign gods. So when she thought she was chanting mantra, and she was actually calling on the name of the foreign gods, and I think it has something to do with the Buddhist chanting. Well, anyway, the Lord opened my eyes and looked at her forehead and the chest and I think the groin area, and sometimes over the arms. But anyway, in her case, it was the forehead, the chest, and groin area of the shape of pentagram, shape of pentagram, and then right in the center of the pentagram was the Buddha statue, because she was chanting that Buddhist kind of mantra. Well, anyway, Satan's insignia is almost like a stamp of ownership. Like when you put the stamp on the cattle, they put a certain insignia on the cattle or other animals' body as ownership. So it's the same thing. And she was a Christian, and I thought she was a really deeply committed Christian, but just because she did the mantra chanting, I think she opened a door to those demonic spirits. And so even after I commanded spirits to leave, and sometimes they do leave, but they come back, and the Lord impressed upon me that as long as she has this Satan's insignia on her forehead, the chest, and groin area, as long as she has them, they will come back. They have a legal right to come back. And so I asked the Lord about this. I mean, this was, quite a few years ago, and I didn't know anything about it. And the Lord said to me, the only way you can erase those insignia, Satan's insignia, is by the blood of Jesus. And so when I met her, well, I was doing a lot of things by phone, but I went to her place, and they were full of demons. And so I applied the blood of Jesus by my palms and washed, around her forehead to erase, her chest area and then groin area. And in a vision, it was not the actual sight, but in a vision, those, Satan's insignia was erased one by one. I did the erasing motion, the forehead, the chest, and groin area. And then from then on, she was totally free and no more invasion or visitation. She called it almost a nightly visitation. And so she was totally free, and she was free of cancer too. And that was my first experience. And later on, the Lord impressed upon me some young people who are involved in computer games. And like, I think they used to have Dungeons and Dragons games. And nowadays, they have many more, computer games that you enter into it, and especially when you pretend that you are certain person in the game, and you get emotionally involved. And I think that's the key. When you take on a certain person, the identity in the game, and then you get personally, emotionally involved, then eventually you get the Satan's insignia on your forehead, the chest, and the groin area. That's the usual case. Well, anyway, the Lord impressed upon me that the young people nowadays involved with the computer gaming, and some of the games are demonic. So you might be concerned about your children with the computer games, and especially if they're really involved in, day in and day out, and more emotionally involved, and taking the personality of the particular entity in the game. And so let me give you the second experience. This was in Amsterdam, Holland, and this was big meeting, and I was one of the speakers. I think there were 3 or 4 speakers in Amsterdam, a huge congregation, and the official leader of this big conference was Archbishop. I forgot his name, but Archbishop, and he was speaking, and I was speaking, and I think 3 or 4 other speakers. Well, anyway, after the formal speakers sessions are over, he invited people to be prayed for. And he said, well, we'll pray for you. And there are quite a few pastors attending. And so one woman came to the front, and then when several pastors started to pray for her, she became violent. And she was almost as small as I am, maybe 5'2" or 3 inches, a little bit bigger than I am. But those pastors who was holding her, it was just thrown to the walls, different side of the walls, and she was dragging those pastors, trying to hold her down, and each one was just thrown. And she was, like I said, a small woman, but superhuman strength, and throwing those big men out. And so there were, a lot of chaos on the stage. It was a big stage, but she was moving around and so on. And then the Lord impressed upon me, she will not be calmed down until she gets the insignia of Satan erased. So somehow she got involved in some games or I think later I found out she was dedicated by her parents to some kind of demonic cult before she became a Christian. So she was a Christian, but I think there was a insignia of Satan because of her previous involvement in a satanic cult. Well, anyway, I told this archbishop, and I told the people who are trying to hold her down, said, get to her forehead and chest and groin area, and by the blood of Jesus, you should do that as soon as possible. And so when she was still moving wildly and violently, and one pastor managed to touch her forehead, and another person touched her chest area and the groin area, he said, with the blood of Jesus, erase those Satan's insignia. And as soon as they did this, she collapsed to the floor and motionless for a while. I thought she was, like partially dead or fainted. But anyway, she came to, consciousness, and she was totally set free. And she repented of any, her ancestors' involvement in occult practices, and she was totally set free. But this was really a big lesson for me, and also this archbishop later told me that he has not seen anything like that before, and he did not know about Satan's insignia. So everybody learned their lessons. So from then on, if there's anything like that or similar to that, superhuman strength to throw people out in violence, and they suspect Satan's insignia. Now, third occasion was I think where was it? It was in South Africa. I was invited to speak at different cities in South Africa, but when I came to the very tip of the southern extreme area, I think it's called Cape Town. It's a beautiful city and wonderful, high, tourist town, and beautiful hotels and seashore, luxury places and so on. Well, anyway, I was invited to speak at this large church, and this was mostly white people. And they told me when the building, the lower part and the second level is full, it's 3,000 people. And as far as I could see, it was totally occupied, full. So it must be about 3,000 people attended. And the interesting part is, even though this was South Africa, mostly attendees were mostly white people, and then in the center of the downstairs there were a group of black people. They told me the pastors discovered most of them had the nightly demonic visitations, even though they are, Christians. But I believe that the history of black people in that area, probably their parents dedicated their children with some kind of demonic entities, and so they had the Satan's insignia, even though they were Christians. So they had, as I said, as long as they had the Satan's insignia, it was almost like a legal occupation, legal entry points. So that's why they were having almost nightly visitations. And so I was on stage, this is a big church. I asked the assistant pastors, there were about 20 of them, I asked all of them, instructed them to touch those, black people who said they had almost nightly visitations. And so I explained the blood of Jesus will erase the Satan's insignia. And so, from the stage, I instructed those assistant pastors and then downstairs, and many of them said instantly they saw something like white vapor, like a grayish white vapor coming out of the forehead area, chest area, and groin area, and then all those, they felt totally free. And so only by the blood of Jesus, all those insignia of Satan have been erased from the forehead, the chest, and the groin area. In some cases, they had the insignia on the arms and the thighs. And there was another lady, there was a different location. I'm just remembering those occasions. This woman had the bite marks on her hips, and you could actually see the bite marks and the blood coming out. And night, while she was asleep, there was a bite marks on her hips, and it's impossible for her to, actually bite her own hips. Anyway, same kind of things, and I think she was involved in some kind of occult practices, and maybe her parents dedicated her. And anyway, the same thing, I applied the blood of Jesus and erased all the insignia of Satan from her body. In her case, she had the insignia on the arms and thighs, and all these bite marks and nightly visitation have been totally erased, stopped. And the pastor of the church, he did not know what to do, and she heard about me, and the pastor asked me to minister to her. So it was just a one-time event, and it took less than maybe 20 minutes. Well, of course, discussing with her what happened and so on. And so I think it altogether, going back and forth, discussing, talking, and praying for her probably 30 minutes. And she was totally set free and no more of the bite marks and so on. Anyway, I want to invite you to my private sessions where you can join in by my website, and you can ask me questions. You can ask me personal prayer requests, okay? So if you would like some personal attention to your situation, it could be yourself, your loved ones, your neighbors, and so on, and anything that you like to ask questions about, to me about those situations, or your special prayer requests, you can join in the private session in my through my website. Okay, God bless you, and bye-bye.